area around El Dakrur mountain in Siwa is famous for its sand dunes and its good quality of sand. That's why patients suffering from rheumatism come and get cured here. So these curing areas are set in the open air, where some pits are dug in the ground like this one and the others around me, behind me and around me. So the patient get buried here in the sand for almost 20 minutes only in a certain part of the year during June, July, August and a part of September. After 20 minutes buried in the heat of the sand, the patients come out, be wrapped by lots of towels, and then he walks to this tent here. The tent is set right beside the pits, and he goes inside the tent and stay inside for a few hours until his body gets used to the temperature, and after that he get dressed and go and take a shower and come back next day to be treated.
When the world was crawling over the path of primary civilization, Egypt was already a pioneer in all fields of science, including the science of medicine. It was only natural for the ancient Egyptians to consider the importance of maintaining good health in order to develop their community and advance into civilization. In other words, Egypt has achieved an amazing progress, whether in diagnosing diseases or in their treatment, and it has a full credit of elevating the cure to a level not reached anywhere else, and they have even excelled in the field of pathology to know the reasons that cause diseases and their symptoms. The papyrus called Edwin Smith proves that the anatomy of the human body was regularly practiced in these old ages. The medical schools that were closely attached to the priesthood of Egypt and its temples achieved a vast famosity, for their highly qualified doctors were summoned to treat kings and nobles and the rich in faraway countries, according to Herodotus, and teaching medicine to any foreign doctor in Egypt was a passport to his success. This fame was acknowledged by Homerus in his Odyssey, for he said, "In Egypt, men are proficient in medicine more than any other human race." Clinics were set in special rooms in the temples to cure the poor for free, and the temples were surrounded by gardens in which the priests cultivated the essential herbs for medicines. Several medical and surgical tools were found in Memphis city and Thebes and Heliopolis and Sal-Hagar cities. A famous scene in Komombo Temple describes in details the tools used in surgical operations. They were invented by the Egyptian doctors and copied and imitated by the Greeks, then the Romans, then transported to the whole world and are still used till today. Siwa Oasis is located in an area remote from the cities and the oases of Egypt, for the closest city is 300 kilometers away and is a beach resort called Marsa Matruh. Thus, the oasis inhabitants had to rely on themselves to develop cures quick enough to save the medical critical conditions as soon as possible. These ways and methods of treating diseases goes back to the old religious inherited beliefs. Magic and prayers are essential means of calling for divine help, and it's close to truth that the psychological relief of the patient could help in his curing. There are traditional natural recipes prepared by the elder women of the oasis and dedicated for curing body aches. This includes headache and cold and flu, and ears and back pain, and wounds and diarrhea, and constipation and allergy, in addition to eye diseases and stomach burn. As for rheumatoid and rheumatism, that's a completely different story for curing. The patients of Siwa Oasis who suffer from rheumatic pain and rheumatoid and joints ache and spinal column aches and obesity, and those who want to activate the blood circulation, they all seek the sand burial treatment.
There is a special area in Siwa Oasis that's dedicated for treating patients suffering from chronic body pain and rheumatism. So right here in the desert there are some pits dug in the ground where patients can be buried in summertime for 20 minutes for a week. There is a special part for the men here, and right there behind this hut behind me there is a part for the women who want to be treated, and this method has proven to be very effective.
Starting from June and ending in the beginning of September, sand baths are set in the open air and under the direct rays of the hot sun around the area of El Dakrur mountain, where the sand is clean and soft and special for these burials. Special sticks are placed into the sand beside each burial to determine the direction of the sun and the shade. Then a shade is set for protecting the head of the sick person. After preparing the burial location, the person lies naked in a pit of sand for 15 to 20 minutes. Then he is taken into an adjacent tent that's closed tightly, where he stays for an hour or two. During that time, he is prohibited from drinking water unless through warm drinks like hot lemon or aniseed. After spending the required time in the tent, the treated person wears warm clothes and wraps himself with a blanket or a wool cloak, then moves into his residential room. He must be careful not to be exposed to any air currents. This procedure is repeated for 3 or 5 or 7 days, according to the condition of the patient. The use of the sand is to open the pores of the body. In the tent, the excessive heat extracts the rest of the sweat of the body. At the end of the day, a professional massage and rubbing is applied to the body using olive oil and lemon vinegar or juice. The Syrian traditional methods of body curing has proven to be highly efficient and successful. The sand burials in the oasis attracts both locals and tourists who come specially to visit this oasis and enjoy the natural healthy body treatment which it supplies and which forms a source of local income and is considered one of the important places of the medical tourism in Egypt which our country enjoys. Aswan is a name derived from the ancient Egyptian name Sun, which means the commercial center or the market, referring to its being the center of trade exchange between the north of the Nile Valley or Egypt and the south of the valley, which is Sudan. Aswan lies within the borders of the first nome of Upper Egypt, which is a nome of Ta city, meaning the land of the bows bearers. Archaeologically, Aswan stretches from El Kab area, 22 kilometers north of Edfu, to Abu Simbel, 280 kilometers south of Aswan, so it includes the monumental sites in Lower Nubia. The prehistoric human had settled in Aswan in an area called Mahallet el-Sabil near Komombo city. Since the beginning of history, Aswan was a center of attraction to the pharaohs of Egypt for its strategic location between the north and south of the Nile Valley. The town of Aswan is celebrated for its cleanliness and magnificent nature, lying below the first cataract of the Nile and enjoying multiple natural parks. It's a much favored winter resort, thanks to its equable dry and warm climate and its sand baths, which are efficacious in the treatment of diseases of the joints. On the west bank of the Nile and opposite the south end of the Elephantine is the villa called Nur el-Salam, or the Light of Peace. It is set in carefully tended gardens that has cages for gazelles and some animals. The villa belonged to Aga Khan III, who is called Sultan Muhammad Shah. He was born in Karachi in Pakistan in 1887 and died in 1957 at Versoix in Switzerland. He was the spiritual head of the Shiite of Ismailiyah, of a branch called Khojas. The Khojas revered him as their 48th leader or Imam. He lived mainly in India and in East Africa. For many years, the Aga Khans spent the winter months at Aswan, seeking relief from a rheumatic complaint. He got himself buried in the warm dry sand bath of Aswan on the west bank, close to his villa, over a land given to him by the late President of Egypt, Gamal Abdul Nasser. The Aga Khan was married 4 times. His first wife was a Persian, and his second wife was French. The third was Italian, and the final 4th one was French. Her title is a Bijum, and her Egyptian Arabic name is Habiba. She's a former beauty queen, and her name is Yvette Labrousse. She was born in 1906. The Aga Khan fell in love with Aswan, that he wanted to be buried in it, so the Bijum carried on the fulfillment of his will. After his death, she chose a location above the villa, situated on the hill with magnificent views, to build him a mausoleum. A stiff climb on a stepped path brings the visitor to a spacious esplanade, from which a broad flight of steps leads up to the entrance. mausoleum is built of ochre-colored calcareous sandstone in a severely restrained style that follows the Fatimid architecture. The interior, in which absolute silence must be observed, is finished in light colors, floored with red carpets, and carefully maintained. Upon the Bijum's instructions, a fresh red rose is laid every day on the sarcophagus, which is made of white marble brought from Italy and decorated with Quranic texts carved in relief. Upon the Bijum's death, and following her will, she was buried next to her husband, the Aga Khan, in his mausoleum. During her life, she lived in Aswan for a month during winter season, where the warm weather attracts tourists from all over the world who escape the cold and freezing temperature and come to Aswan seeking the pleasant warm climate. Some of them seek remedy in sand burials that's truly appreciated in the field of medicine and prescribed for patients not only in the past but till today. For the kind of remedy that the hot sand of Egypt offers is unmatched, being 100% natural cure for the body, relieving its joints and muscles, and purifying and reinforcing its blood circulation. There is no better place in the world to be buried in those sand baths than Egypt, and for some people, they wanted to go under the ground of the same sand for eternity, and the Aga Khan is the best example of going these extra miles.